Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lead, Sell, Grow, the Human Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Konovalov. And as always, it's such a pleasure to be with you, my friends. I can't share enough gratitude to you for continuing to listen to the show, continuing to share the episodes and commenting on them. You guys mean the world to me. So thank you. Mwah. If you haven't yet done so, get over to Facebook, join Lead, Sell, Grow, the Human Experience Mastermind. I want to talk to you in the group. I want to hear what you think of these episodes, and I want to get to know you. All right, without any further ado, I have an amazing guest with me today. Josh Freedman is one of the world's top experts on leveraging emotional intelligence for business performance. With clients from Amazon to US Navy to Qatar Airways to even the small companies, Josh has 25 years of experience. As a matter of fact, 25 years ago, he co-founded 6 Seconds, the world's first global nonprofit dedicated to growing EQ. EQ stands for emotional intelligence, in case you didn't know. He's published 6 validated assessments, 5 books, and an incredible library of business cases and articles. He leads the world's largest study of emotional intelligence called State of the Heart. Oh, that's so sweet. And just published a fantastic new business case showing why emotional intelligence is even more valuable today. Josh, welcome to the show, my friend.
I am glad to be here. Thank you, Eric. And hi, everyone.
Awesome. So before we get started, how would you define emotional intelligence?
The simpler is better, being
Yes.
smarter with feelings.
Say that again.
Being smarter with feelings. We all
Being
have feelings.
smarter with feelings.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can make us dumb or they can make us smarter. We've all experienced them making us dumb. And so, how is it that we can use emotions to help us be smarter, to understand ourselves, the landscape around us, people in our lives, our clients, customers, and use that emotional data to help guide us where we really want to go?
Help me. Can you give me an example of how someone can be dumber with feelings and smarter with feelings?
Sure. You're in a sales meeting and your customer says, Eric, I think you're full of bleep. And you can say, what the are you talking about? I'm not, right. That'd be dumber.
Yes, that would be dumber.
Or you can say, gosh, Joe, you know what? It sounds like we
You're
got to
having a bad
talk through
day.
this. We got there's something we're not connecting the dots here. And I know that this is going to work for you. Let me show you how. And that'd be smarter.
That would be smarter. Yeah. I mean, to me, that sounds like common sense, no?
Sure, it's just not common and enough. But very specifically, the word intelligence, what it means is accurately acquiring and effectively using data. So if you're mathematically intelligent, it means you accurately get that mathematical data and you use it effectively to solve mathematical problems. Like, okay, what's the discount on this? Blah, 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 blah. How do we budget for this, to blah, 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 blah. Those are mathematical problems. Then there are emotional problems. How do we build alignment with somebody who disagrees? How do we connect with people across differences? How do we influence? How do we really understand what's not just being said, but beyond what's being said? That takes a different kind of data. So accurately acquiring emotional data and effectively using it.
How do you know if you've accurately acquired
it? Well,
Because isn't it just
I
perception?
asked my wife,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
and she says, how did you not see that? You get tons of feedback from people, Eric, all the time. Constant feedback from people. You think that such and such is going on, you kind of respond to that, and you see them kind of lean back a little bit. You see them kind of frowning, you see them opening up, you see them saying, yeah, you know what, I do want to talk to you again. That feedback is there for the taking for free. And as somebody who makes your living out of relationships, that data is invaluable.
Okay. So have you ever heard of Landmark, like the Landmark Forum?
Sure.
Okay. Ever been through it?
No.
No. Okay. So I went through Landmark and their advanced course and all that. And one of the things that I learned there, which was just such a huge takeaway, was that we human beings are meaning making machines. So something happens and we make a meaning out of it.
Yeah.
So, like in your example, you say something and the person kind of pulls back, and we're like, we're going to make a meaning out of that pullback. But how do we know it's accurate? Like, what if they just had a cramp
Yeah.
at the same time?
Right. So this is exactly the point. How do you know if it's accurate? Is you grow your emotional intelligence. You get better at reading that data. You get better at that meaning making, and you stop making as many mistakes in the assumptions that you're making because you're better able at acquiring that data. So you can also ask people, like that's
Okay.
part of the process of learning. But as people become more skilled in their emotional intelligence, that's exactly the kind of meaning making that they're doing, and they're doing it better than people who haven't developed their emotional intelligence.
Love it. So I'm a big fan of asking. Like if I'm sitting in front of somebody and they move back, I would say, whoa, so you just moved back. Help me understand. Is it something I said, something here? I would prefer that than just assuming that they're taking back or they don't like what I'm saying.
Sure. A lot of times people don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. And so I think that you asking is a really effective strategy a lot of the time. And sometimes it's not. And also sometimes people aren't really prepared to be honest with you.
True.
And so I think a lot of it, as usual, has to do with the cadence, has to do with where you are in the relationship. And when I think about sales, I really think, and leadership, by the way, the same thing. I think about it as how much trust have we built? And the amount of trust we built changes how we engage. And
Mm,
when I built a lot of trust, how do I know I built a lot of trust? Well, I feel it, but also I hear different things. And when I say to somebody, hey, looks like maybe you had some reaction to what I just said. Would you like to tell me more about it? They say, yeah, actually, I will tell you what's going on.
I like that. Yeah, your approach was definitely way better than mine. My EQ is not up there yet, but I'm gonna grow it. So Josh,
I can help you.
I appreciate it. Can you take me back to 25 years ago before you started the organization?
Yeah.
What were you doing? What made you see this as something that's going to be needed?
Well, I'll go back a little further than that. 1992, I was actually working in a school, and this journalist named Dan Goleman came and visited the school. We had a lot of people visiting, so didn't think that much of it. But he said, you know what you guys are doing here is you're teaching emotional intelligence. And we all said, that's super interesting. Hadn't heard that term before. What does that mean? And he shared with us the research of people like Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer, the people who really first published a scientific article on this topic, Candace Pert, Reuven Bar-On, other people who were doing research in this space. And he, in his 1995 book, wrote a chapter about our methodology, which is called Self-Science. And it's the science of studying yourself. And he said, this is one of the two models I found in the world of how you develop emotional intelligence. And then we started getting a lot of calls from people saying, this is pretty cool. This book, I really believe what it's saying, but it doesn't tell me how. Can you tell me how? And so in 1997, we decided to start an organization that would answer that question of how. How do we practically use and grow and leverage emotional intelligence? And I had no intention that we'd be working across the world. Uh, I really had no idea what I was in for. But we started getting people contacting us from lots of different countries and spaces and sectors and saying, we are with the such and such army, and we think this could be helpful. We're with this union over here. We're with this manufacturing plant here. With this financial services company here. We believe in this stuff. We want to grow it. How do you do it? And so at this point, we have people in 150 countries and territories who are certified in our methods and tools. You mentioned I've been part of a bunch of emotional intelligence assessments. We have a whole suite of tools for individuals and organizations. and also, by the way, for kids in schools. And we have learning tools that can help people, everywhere from an introduction to this, like we're doing here, all the way through to a doctoral program that we're partners with a university called Antioch University. We have a doctorate in this. So kind of a full soup to nuts, how measuring and growing these skills. And it's been a really wild ride.
That's insane. What were some of the challenges that those companies were having back in the day where they thought that raising their EQ would help?
Mm-hmm. I think it's not that different than what we're seeing now. Um, Collaborating across difference, um, making better decisions, really engaging people in a more meaningful way, getting more value with people, value for employees, value for customers, value for shareholders. How do we going to get more insight into the people side of business? And the paradox is, uh, we go back 2,000 years, and kind of the only thing that we have in common in business 2,000 years ago and now is people. And yet, that's the part that a lot of leaders struggle with. We published one of our research studies. We started asking people, what are the top 2 to 3 challenges in your organization? And about 70% of the answers are relational and people.
Mm.
And we also asked them, how hard is it? How important is it to address these problems? And the people issues are where organizations are seeing they're really struggling, and that they need help.
Wow. And are these studies available to anybody?
Yeah, we have a couple of big studies that we publish kind of every other year. This year, you mentioned State of the Heart. This is our State of the Heart year. The other one is called Organizational Vitality, the Organizational Vitality Study. And they're on our website, free to download all of these reports, as well as a huge library of cases and other pieces. We're a nonprofit, and that doesn't mean we give away everything, but we exist to grow emotional intelligence in the world and increase advocacy and help people learn these tools. And we're kind of an unusual nonprofit in that we're almost entirely funded through our products and services. But we love giving this stuff away to people who want to go use it and share it, and be part of the vision of a more emotionally intelligent world.
Oh, that's so great. Um, I have a question for you. And you ever had one of those things where like the question just pops out of your mind, but it was a really, really good one? All right, I'll get back to it, I promise.
Is your question, what was my question?
Was my question, was your question? No, um, if a company came to you and said, all right, we know we need to deal with the people issue, we're having challenges, um, we're all in, whatever you say we're gonna do, where do you start?
I love that question. I think I start with asking them, tell me more about it. Tell me more about why you've come to that conclusion. Because the first step we've seen in our practice and our research is that we need alignment around that why. A lot of organizations kind of give lip service to people development. They kind of, well, I mean, literally, Eric, on the balance sheet, people are a cost. And companies will say, people are our number one asset. But literally on the balance sheet, that's not the case. And so when they think about really growing and developing people, I think often there's some trepidation, like, well, they're just going to leave, and, not going to get a lot of ROI from that. So I think it's crucial. I know it's crucial now from lots and lots and lots of experiences that we get aligned on the business case for this organization. And starting with customers and value creation, how are you creating value? What does that look like? And what is the emotional experience that customers need to have in order to have that value creation? Then we can take a step back and say, okay, so what is the culture that's going to drive that experience? Because emotions are human, and super contagious. Some emotional transmission occurs in things like, yeah, I love your website, or that's a, that blue background kind of does something for me. But if that blue background is like, let's just say it helps me feel more calm and focused, but then you're like this, you know, I'm not going to feel calm and focused. So the human experience is drives most of our emotional experience. And you can go to an incredibly great hotel. It's got the most 7,000 thread count linen, whatever. And then somebody's grumpy at you in the hallway, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that hotel, right? So that that human interaction is something we can map and we can design and we can optimize so that we create the emotional impact that we're looking for. And then we take a step back and say, okay, what are the leadership capacities that we're going to need to do that? How do we grow that capacity and integrate it across the org?
So in the hotel scenario that you just gave, right? I have, really nice hotel, 7,000 thread linens, and somebody's grumpy at me in a hallway. And because they're grumpy at me, I say, oh, this hotel isn't great. Is that because my EQ is low?
No, I think it's because you're human. And part of the what you're buying, the reason you spent $500, $700 on that night was partly for the linen, but largely for the experience. I mean, look, the Motel 6 is probably pretty clean, and it's got a bed. So
Not in North Carolina.
all right. So the Holiday Inn, and you're paying the premium price because of the premium experience. And in part, that's delivered through material things, but in large part, it's delivered through relational things.
I got it. Okay. I go back to that meaning making machines, and I think, and I don't know if this is EQ or not, but if I'm in a hotel and it's a nice hotel and I paid $500 a month or a night, and I go to my room and somebody's mean to be in the hallway, I'd like to think that I'm at the point, and it also depends on my battery level, right? If I'm coming from
Sure.
the gym and I just got energized and I'm having a great day, somebody's mean to me, what I would typically do in that case is kind of wish them good luck and hope they have a better day,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't affect me. I don't know if that's EQ. Now, if I'm
One,
tired after a long day and I got, I've been on 5 sales calls and I got rejected on 4 of them, and my wife called and she's mad and my kid got sick and I'm walking to my hotel room really upset and somebody's mad at me or is nasty to me, that might be a different response.
yeah. Yeah. Actually, I think it's a really fun project when you're traveling. There's a guy named Todd Everett who taught me a lot about sales. He was in one of our advisors for a while, and he and I were traveling quite a bit. And he had this game, which was, I'm going to see how good a customer experience I can create for myself.
Love it.
And every time we would be traveling, he would like practice engaging staff members, especially ones who were grumpy, to improve their day and improve our customer experience.
Yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
like
I love
reverse
that.
customer experience design.
I love that. And so is that emotional intelligence?
Yeah, it was a way for him to practice his emotional intelligence and really, let me see if I can shift this relationship, and like, this didn't get off on a great start. Let me see if I can shift it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I can relate to your partner. Okay. Um,
But
so
Eric, just going back to that for a
yeah,
second, if you own that hotel, do you want my colleague having to do that work, or do you want your staff to do that work?
no, I want my staff to do that work. 100%.
And that's going to increase your value of your
Absolutely.
business. And this is, we're not, like, sometimes people hear, oh, emotional intelligence, that's really touchy feely. It's emotional, but humans are emotional.
Mhm.
And if we want to do a good job in sales especially, but in any of our leadership and any of our organizational work, and as parents, spouses, and family members. We have to get good at this emotional part.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Josh, last year you published a case study about sales reps and sales leadership at UCB Pharma.
Yeah.
What did you find?
So this was a super interesting case. And we've had this belief for a while that there's a ripple effect in emotional intelligence. And so, for example, I said how if the senior leader comes to me, I mean, basically what I'm saying is leaders are going to go first, right? We're going to understand this and put it into action ourselves as senior leaders. What the UCB Pharma case found is that when leaders do that, it ripples. So they wanted to improve customer relationships. But the way we went about it in this case was working with sales managers and not actual reps. And what we found is that when the managers grew their emotional intelligence, the reps had better relationships with customers. So, I mean, everybody who's run a sales organization knows this, that the way you treat salespeople, they turn around and treat customers like that and treat each other like that. And if you set up a context where people are, impatient and hostile and totally competitive, and, there's just, I don't know, a harsh context, you end up with a very transactional, low trust relationship among your people and with your customers. But we got to document it in this case.
Can you share how you document something like that?
Yeah, you measure the manager's emotional intelligence. You measure the quality of the salespeople's. In this company, they're not called salespeople; they're called reps. It's a pharma company, but you measure the quality of the relationship between reps and customers. You measure you work with the managers. You measure it again, and you see that it increased, and then you measure the rep relationship, and you see that it improved.
Got it. Are you able to share some of the work you did with the managers to help them increase their emotional intelligence?
In general terms, yes. This was not a project that I was directly involved in. I can share a case with like the Sheraton, a Sheraton in Orlando that I did myself, or projects we've done with the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps or United Nations. But in general, what we do is we use that measurement to help people pay attention to where they are. We help them understand the benefit for themselves, both for them personally and in their work of growing these skills. And then we have 8 learnable competencies that we measure. The first one we call enhancing emotional literacy, which is like the basic building blocks of emotional intelligence. It's like learning, to read numbers to grow your mathematical intelligence. It's hard to be mathematically intelligent if you can't tell, what a 4 is and a 5 is and a 6 is. It's hard to be emotionally intelligent if you can't tell the difference between frustration and disappointment and anger.
So once a manager feels the emotion of anger, what do you recommend they do?
Um, take a step back. So first of all, we need to understand what emotions are and why we have them. And I think a lot of people make a lot of judgments about certain kinds of emotions like anger. For me, anger is not objectively less valuable or less good than, let's say, happiness. Anger is a message. It tells us about what we're perceiving.
Mhm.
Specifically, anger tells us that I want to go over there and there's an obstacle. That's the meaning of anger. And if I can understand, well, what is the obstacle that I'm perceiving and where is it I want to go? If I can understand that, I can start to then take a step back and look at, well, what am I right? First of all, let me get some more data and appraise this situation. Is this really an obstacle? Am I focused on the right thing? But ultimately, we can use that anger to help motivate us to kind of push through or push around or problem solve or do something to get past that obstacle. So when we take this adaptive view of emotions, that all emotions are there for a reason, they're messages from us for us, and they're helping us deal with the opportunities and threats that we're perceiving. We then start to shift our own relationship with our emotions, and we don't need to stay stuck in them. So where anger gets problematic, where all emotions get problematic, even happiness gets problematic, is in the way we act it out. And when we act it out in a way that's not aligned with, like, well, what the real problem is. So for example, maybe I'm making an assumption that you're the problem. And so I get in there and I say, Eric, I'm sick and tired of this. We got to da 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 da. You're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not me. So now I've taken this really useful thing and I misdirected it. Lost opportunity and damaged relationship. So first step is to understand what you're feeling and why. Understand that feelings are there for a reason. There's a message. How do I decode that message? And then we can say, okay, let's find a way to understand this situation a little more completely. And often that is to recognize it's not just anger. Maybe there are other feelings as well. My favorite coaching question: well, what else are you feeling? There's data here. There's something for us to understand. What else is going on? And when we get that broader perspective, we're able to actually use emotions in a much more useful way.
Have you found, um, and maybe you're not able to share this with me, but when you're dealing with Marines and sailors, are you mainly working with NCOs, staff NCOs, or officers, or both?
Officers.
Officers.
My experience has been mostly with officers.
Got it. And
Not entirely, but
is there a difference between training officers in the military versus training the management staff at a hotel?
not in a fundamental way. What I found is it's important to have frames of reference that people can relate to, and using metaphors that people can relate to, using examples that they can relate to. That context setting, and I'm sure the same thing is true with all kinds of sales and all kinds of communication. When we can kind of have that matched set of frames that we're talking about, feel this sense, okay, I know what you're talking about. I can relate to that. So even like the kind of video clip we might use for a workshop. So when we did the project for the Navy and Marine Corps, we had an officer who was assigned to us. He'd been through our certification training. We worked together a lot on helping to find examples and videos, and even the way we explained exercises. So like we might do an exercise that involves finding your way through a maze. And in a business context, we might say, okay, so here's the scenario. We're going to imagine that, when you this getting through this maze is a metaphor for launching a new product. That setup is not going to work well with a group of Marines. But if you say getting through this maze is equivalent to getting out and setting up field operations effectively, go, oh, okay, I know what that is.
Got it. So, as a Marine, and I've been out for a while, right? I got out in 2007, so it's been quite a long time. But I've always felt that in the military, the people who are under your charge, they can't quit. Like, they can't leave. They got to follow. As long as it's a lawful order, they should follow it, or they get in trouble. So is there like less leeway? And by the way, I don't know how much time an officer is going to have in a combat zone to check their emotions, though I think it's super important, right? I mean, stress levels are going to be through the roof all around. So that's why I asked that question about the military. Like, do they care as much as the hotel employee, knowing that they're not going to lose their soldiers or Marines or airmen or sailors?
No, but they're going to lose one another's lives
Because of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
So are you, if you don't have trust with your squad,
mm-hmm.
if you're not, when somebody says there's a problem with blah blah blah, do you believe them?
If I don't have trust, probably not.
Right? When you give an order that's going to put somebody in, put your whole squad in danger, you know it, you're doing it on purpose. How do you know if they're gonna follow that order? It's not enough that they have to. And you've been there.
And you're saying with EQ, they follow it, and without EQ, they don't.
I think you get a different kind of compliance versus motivation. I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is they think that compliance and motivation are the same. You get somebody to do the minimum, that's compliance. You get somebody to go through the motions, that's compliance. You get somebody to fully commit, that's motivation. And I think my experience with the Marine Corps is they're actually really good at emotional intelligence. They talk about emotions a lot. They just don't call them emotions. They call it oorah. They call it get your head in the game. They call it esprit. Right? But there's so much conversation about emotions. It's just coded.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was not connecting those dots.
And Eric, let me check that, because firsthand way better than me. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And am I making something up here? Is this what you experienced?
I'm not sure we talked about emotions. I'm not sure. Knowing what I know now, I don't recall. I don't recall the leadership really caring about. They cared about the welfare of the troops, right? It's mission accomplishment, troop welfare. They cared about troop welfare. They didn't necessarily care about how everybody felt. And so when I hear emotional intelligence, I'm equating that to wondering how everybody else is feeling. And that may or may not be what emotional intelligence is. But what the way that we connected, the way that we build trust with our officers and our enlisted and the leaders is if they led by example, if they did what they said they were going to do, if they showed that they cared about each individual Marine.
Wait. Let's stick with that one for a second.
Hmm?
They showed they cared.
Oh, absolutely.
That sounds pretty emotional.
Yeah, I cared for
Again,
them.
it's not using the emotion words, right? It's not saying, hey, you seem disappointed about this, but there's an emotional awareness
Yeah.
that's really important in that work.
Yeah. Like if a Marine was going, was going through a divorce or something, terrible time, and that officer kind of pulled him off to the side. Hey, are you okay? Talked to him and, told him to go take care of himself and whatever he needs to take care of. Like that was pretty cool stuff, right? So yeah, I guess that's all emotional intelligence. That's really nice. What do most businesses get wrong about emotional intelligence?
I think the biggest mistake is, oh yeah, we did a training on that, we're done.
Yeah, we check the box.
Check that box. The other piece is, I mean, we certainly experienced this with the Navy and Marine Corps. People aren't so comfortable. Like one of the Navy officers said, I really like this material, but do you think we could call it something other than emotional intelligence?
Mm.
Like, yeah, tell me about that. Well, that word emotional, it's like people react to it. So I think a lot of times in businesses, they say, we really want these benefits, but we don't want to talk about emotions. We don't want to actually get into even the depth of conversation you and I just got into. Like, let's just keep it, well, let's just talk about sales, and like reading the customer. Like, okay, what are we reading? Just the customer, not their emotions. No, 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 no. Read their mind. Okay. Like, listen to understand. Well, does how they feel matter? No, just understand.
Yeah, because
So,
they
in
die
other words,
emotionally.
right? So, I have my iceberg handy. We use the metaphor of the iceberg a lot. And you think about, down here is this felt experience, culture, identity, belonging. And up here is behavior. And if you just focus up here, you're kind of missing the point. So it's not just a training, and it's not just neck up.
What what have been some of your aha moments, even in the last, I don't know, 5 years, from what you knew before to what you know now?
Change is hard. It's hard to get past that one. It's like, actually, it's so interesting because change, we're amazingly good at change. You think about your experiences going through what you've gone through in your life, and you've adapted and you've shifted and you've built a new business, and like we're incredibly adaptable. But then we get stuck, and then it's really hard. And most of the reason that it's hard is emotional. It's not, well, I don't know that it's important to communicate more effectively, or managers, every manager knows that feedback is useful, but like I'm uncomfortable doing that. I don't know how to do that. So where we get stuck tends to be in this emotional space, and I think that leads to a lot of kind of discomfort and distrust of emotion. And I can tell you for myself, I was really afraid of emotions. I
That's
didn't
an
like
emotion
asking.
in itself.
Yeah, I didn't like asking people how they were feeling, because what if they told me, and then what if they were upset, and then what was I going to do? The biggest aha for me is I thought that if I asked somebody about their feelings, it would like open Pandora's box. And what I learned is the box is open. If somebody's experiencing big emotions, it's there. You can pretend it's not, but it doesn't make it go away. But actually just acknowledging it and asking about it is often all you actually need to do.
Josh, based on your experience in observing different leaders, I'm curious, as leaders at work, but also husbands and fathers and mothers in the house, what do people with higher levels of emotional intelligence do that ones with lower levels do not do?
Yeah. So we go back to these competencies, these eight, another sticker here with the eight competencies.
What are
And
they?
so, well, enhancing emotional literacy. So accurately naming and understanding feelings. So
Mm.
somebody who's, earlier I said, I felt this, and you're like, yeah, that's an emotion. You noticed it, right? Somebody with lower emotional intelligence wouldn't even realize that was an emotion. So noticing emotions, naming emotions. Our next competency is recognizing patterns, which is about how am I reacting? And you learned this in Landmark for sure, right? Noticing that I have recurring ways of reacting, and I don't, just being aware, oh, well, okay, when I'm afraid, I withdraw. That's why I wasn't asking about feelings. And then I find myself withdrawing, and I can go, hey, wait a minute. Am I doing that on purpose? Or is that just my unconscious reaction? So making that unconscious more conscious. Okay, then we move over to the red area. I won't go through them all, but
No, definitely. I'm curious. I don't.
okay. So apply consequential thinking. So that's where we stop and say, well, is this going to get me where I want to go? Am I going to get, what's the impact? Now, this one is such a big deal in all of our relationships, recognizing we are influencing each other. We are social animals. So as a parent, as a friend, as a salesperson, as a customer, my friend was like, I'm going to use my emotional influence on the person, even though I'm the customer, right? So we influence each other, and consequential thinking is about applying consequential thinking. It's about pausing and saying, okay, where is this going to fall? What might happen next? How am I going to feel? How are they going to feel? How are those feelings going to translate into behavior? And are we going to get what we want?
Hmm.
If no, then we need to deal with that pattern and say, okay, I got to switch off autopilot. The pattern is fueled by emotion. So the next competency is navigating emotions, not managing them, we call it navigating because it's about harnessing it and saying, there's wisdom, there's energy, there's value in this. I need, just like, setting a sail, I got to adjust my sail to harness that and tune into it and use it on purpose and not just let it blow me sideways.
Wow, really good. How many emotions are there?
Well, they're different. Researchers have different models. I really like a model from somebody named Robert Plutchik, who identified 8 basic emotions based on animal behavior. Some people say 6, some people say 5, some people say just 1, love. There are about 3,000 words for feelings in the English language. And so, in some way, like, people get very theoretical about this, and it's like, whatever. We can all feel it. We can all feel that sense of, being supported or not, being connected or not, feeling that sense that there's something in our way or not. Right. And so those kind of basic human experiences, and they turn out to be cross-cultural.
Yeah.
Everywhere in the world, if I say, okay, what do you think just happened before I make this face? And like everywhere in the world, it's like something bad happened. There was like, maybe your kid got sick, or maybe you know, there's a loss. My acting skills aren't so great, but that was supposed to be sorrow.
That was sorrow. Okay.
There's a loss, and actually, I love these cards. Here, we could show them. We can show them this card. What happened right before this card? Right,
Something sad.
something sad, right? And so, like, everywhere in the world. Now, how sad was it? That's culturally specific. Is this appropriate to show at work? That's culturally specific. But the underlying human experience, there's a loss of some kind. That's universal.
Yeah. I ordered like a medium rare ribeye and they brought me a well done one. That's what happened.
That's this one.
That's that one for sure. That's funny. Awesome. So, how can people take advantage of your 501c3?
I don't want them to take advantage of it.
Well, okay, maybe that was not the best way. The maybe that was not the best. All right, English is my second language. All right, so give
Is
me
it really?
yes. I guess what I wanted to ask is how could people utilize your amazing nonprofit organization to help them and their organizations grow in their emotional intelligence?
Well, for business, we have a whole practice around, we call it EQ Biz, working with organizations on getting the value from emotional intelligence, whether that's in sales or leadership, in mapping culture, in working with high potentials, in equipping your talent pipeline, really looking at who do you select and how. We have measurement tools for all of these different pieces for individuals and systems. Most common applications, things like sales training, but our interest is really in helping you grow capacity in your organization. So even when we're working with a smaller business, we really like to take a more train the trainer kind of approach, equip people to be able to use the tools themselves, teach them to fish. So in larger organizations, we typically work with learning and development departments, getting people certified in these tools and methods so they can embed them across the organization. Using the metrics, we have a full API, so you can embed these metrics across your people development systems, from selection to performance management to growth. We have a lot of curriculum and tools that you can use. But I think the starting point would be grab some of the research, grab some of the case studies, start having the conversation of saying, is this important for our value creation right now? Is the way people work together, how much does that matter? What customers experience, how much does that matter to us? And if it matters a lot, and the organizations we work with tend to be more relational, tend to be places where the customer relationship is more crucial to the bottom line, like finance, hospitality. But we've also worked with manufacturing. How do you create a culture of safety? So it's not just compliance. We've worked with militaries. How do you equip people so that they are more adaptable to change? And then lots and lots of case studies you can read on our website, 6seconds.org, and start to explore, well, if we think this kind of relational approach is important, we can help you grow the capacity to do it.
Got it. So, what doesn't fall under emotional intelligence? Because you talked about safety, you talked about compliance, you talked about helping people adapt to change. Like, those are all like completely different things, all under this umbrella of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
What's not under that umbrella?
Well, I did a bad job selling to a chemical manufacturing company once. And they said, well, have you worked with a company like ours? And at the time we hadn't. Now we've worked with quite a lot of chemical companies, but at the time we hadn't. And I said a little snarkily, well, so you have these specialty processes, right? But do you have people here? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, well, that's our specialty is people. I didn't win the business, but um, the point is that the more relational complexity, the more important these skills are. So if you're leading across boundaries, if you're trying to bring people together from different perspectives and groups, if you're trying to do high stakes sales, if you're trying to really create a world-class culture and attract the best talent, there's a lot of relational complexity in that. And so anywhere that the relationships become very important, emotions become very important. And, it's like, does motivation matter in your organization? Does communication matter? Does collaboration matter? The more those things matter, the more emotional intelligence is going to matter.
Really good. Awesome, Josh. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you were hoping I would?
Oh my gosh. I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of good ground.
Awesome. What's for listeners who are now, becoming interested in learning more, what's a good first step for them to take to engage with you?
Head over to the website, 6seconds.org, start exploring. We have a contact form there. We have people all over the world who are happy to talk with you. We have an incredible network of coaches and facilitators and practitioners, as I said, in 150 countries and territories. And whether you're in a small business or a larger business, or looking at this for yourself, you want to become a coach, this emotional intelligence is going to help you do that, and we can help you grow that. We're really active on LinkedIn and other social media, so you can follow us there. And we have free webinars and events every month. We have a whole group of volunteer network leaders all around the world who are doing online events that you can join and bring some of your colleagues to and prompt some conversation. So I encourage you to just dip your toe in and start kind of seeing, well, does this approach, does this fit with our vision of value creation? Does this fit with the culture we're trying to build? And if yes, then let's get into measuring it and growing it in a systematic way.
Awesome. Love that. Josh, thank you so much for being here. This was very interesting. Before I let you go, what does it take for someone to become a coach in emotional intelligence?
So we have an ICF accredited coach certification program. It's also one of the few coach programs in North America that's accredited for about a third of a master's degree, an MBA, or a master's in management. And so it's pretty in depth. It takes about a year. And they go through the process of really experiencing it, growing their own skills, starting on the inside, getting good with the tools, and then lots and lots of supported practice to become really effective as an emotional intelligence coach. And
Wow.
it is incredible. It's been huge for me in my own growth. And I feel really privileged to work with people all over the world on that adventure.
And what kind of an investment does that take
It's about 10K.
for the year?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you guys take GI Bill?
I don't know. That's a good question. I got to find out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. I think a lot of veterans coming out would be, be pretty, that would be a good program to get into.
All right, I'm going to do some research.
Yeah. Awesome, Josh. Well, thank you so much for being here. Learned a lot. Guys, head over actually 6seconds.org and I'll have all the links below. Reach out, get your emotional intelligence to a higher level, because I know that if your EQ raises, guess what? You're going to be a better leader. You're going to be a better parent. You're going to be a better brother, son, daughter, whatever it is that you are, is just going to elevate you. You're going to treat people differently. You're going to see the world differently. So I encourage you to check this out. This is a huge, huge topic for us, our future, and our children. Josh, thank you for being here. We'll see you guys on the next episode.